I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and sculptor and also a father. And in this video, I'm going to be sculpting a little bit of a portrait that I did of my oldest daughter. And I'm going to be talking about fatherhood, what it's meant to me, and talk about 5 lies that I feel like we are sold in our society about fathers. So first, I just want to say that for a little bit of context, I'm 31. I have 4 children. I have a girl who's 7. Then we had a boy who's just about to turn 5. We have another girl who just turned 2. And we have a boy who's about 8 months old. And being a father is the greatest part of my life. It's the thing that has brought me the most joy, the most meaning, the most purpose in my life. And I feel like it's such a shame that so many people nowadays are forgoing or they're giving up on the blessing that it is to be a father. They're choosing of their own volition to be barren, to be childless, and then they're dressing it up as like child-free. So talking about children using the same language as you would describe someone of being cancer-free. You're using the phrasing that is used to describe cancer and putting children in that place. Child-free, cancer-free. Like, this is a horrible way to talk about parenting, to talk about being a father, but it's something that's so common. There's many movements that are talking about the benefits of being childless, being barren. It is very unfortunate to see how many people fall into and believe the lies that are being told about parenthood, that it's a responsibility that should be avoided, or that it's something that is just a headache. It is the most meaningful thing. The only people who know, who can actually have anything to say about whether it is better to be without children or with children, are the people who have children. They're the only ones who can say, I've been without children, and I've had children, and I've been without children, and I've had children, and being married and having children is better than being single on your own. It is just a better situation. It's more motivating. It is a bigger responsibility. There's more at stake. It is harder. It's more difficult, but anything that's worthwhile is going to be difficult. So I just can't recommend it enough. I hope that you won't buy into the anti-fatherhood, anti-family propaganda, and I hope that we'll have a lot of people that have a lot more kids. We need more good kids in the world. We need more good people in the world, and somebody's got to bring those souls into the world. And so I hope that those of you who are on the fence or thinking about, like, well, maybe you have a kid and should we have another or should we wait? I would always err on the side of family and fatherhood. And so that's just a little bit about how much being a father has meant to me. There's generally some sort of comment about, why are you talking about this? This is supposed to be an art channel. I'm not interested in your opinions about whatever. So I just want to address that first. And my feelings are that this is my personal channel, the Andrew Joseph Keith YouTube channel, and therefore I'll talk about things that interest me, whether that's political, religious, art-related, which is something that's a passion of mine and something that I very much enjoy. But I feel like as artists, we should also be using our art and our voice to promote messages that we believe in. And I don't think that we should be scared of our audience, and I don't feel like we should be able to be captured by our audience in such a way that we censor ourselves and keep from saying what we believe to be true because we're afraid of the negative reaction that it might have. So in short, this is my channel. I'll talk about things that interest me, and you don't have to watch if you are not interested in that. So the first lie that I feel like we're told is that fathers are not needed, or sometimes it's put that men are not needed, men are not necessary. And there is a feminist who put it like, women need men like fish need a bicycle. So basically, men are irrelevant, they're not important, they're not needed, and that's a lie. The only reason that it was a sustainable, philosophy is because of the men that have built a society that's so safe and functions so well and has so much wealth that people are able to convince themselves that it's just always been this way, that we've just always been in a position where there's not need for your average person, male or female, to fight for their life or to go out and hunt to survive or to actually physically build your own shelter to live in. And so we come from this idea that men are disposable because of the men of the past generally who have built a society so wealthy that we can have that illusion or delusion. This largely arose because of feminism, and that feminist movement sought to destroy the family, to interrupt the nuclear family, mother and father, married together, raising their children. That is under a huge attack, and we're going to talk about all the different ways that that family unit is under attack with these lies that are being sold to people all over the world, but especially in Western civilization right now. In America, where I live, this is stuff that is just, it's basically in the air, in the media we consume, in the movies we watch, in our education system, promoted by government. There's all of these pushes away from that traditional nuclear family and normalizing abnormal situations, family situations, normalizing anything other than what is actually normal, which is a mother and a father committed to one another, raising their children. That's the ideal. I believe that it's primarily the responsibility of men to fight and defend that family structure. It's the responsibility of men and women, but because I am a man, I'm going to say that as much as I can, I'll take the responsibility onto myself and say, you know what, this is my responsibility to fight for the family. Now, even if you could make the argument that women don't need men because women now have the government, so the government can take care of them through welfare programs, and they can go and have a child, create a child without a physical man present. They can do this in a doctor's office, create a child with somebody you've never met, who you'll never meet, and this is something that is now part of an argument that women don't need men because, you know, they can have children without having a father in the home, without even knowing the father. They can be taken care of through working outside of the home, putting their kids in daycare. And so even if you could make the argument that women don't need men, you certainly cannot make that argument that children don't need their fathers. And we're seeing that more and more bared out through the statistics, that the more absent fathers are, the harder it is on children growing up, and that children need mother and father just like they need proper nutrition, physical activity, exercise. It's one of these needs where if we're robbed of it, if it's taken from us, then it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to overcome that kind of a hurdle and end up where everybody else is. And we see this with, and so just one example, taking one element of success, we'd say financial success, though that isn't, it's not the most important thing, but just as an example, there's a lot of people that like to talk about group identity and things like white privilege and those types of privileges based on groups. The problem with that is that if you take those groups and you say, okay, well, like these certain groups are advantaged because of their race, and that's why they're on average a little bit more successful. If you do that, then you actually find that Asians outperform white people, and Indian Americans outperform white people. There's a lot of groups that outperform in a way that doesn't really make sense. But if you categorize all the groups by the percentage of fathers that are in the home, and then you compare that with the group's income level, average income level, but you could really do it with anything. You could do it with incarceration level or any other level that you would say, oh, these groups are more successful. We'll stack them at the most successful to the least successful. And then you do the same thing. These are the groups with the most fathers at home to the least fathers at home. And those are identical charts. They align identically, and there's no outliers. Groups that tend to have more intact families, more fathers in the home, are the groups that tend to be more successful. They tend to raise children that are more successful in every aspect of life. And those that have the highest rates of fatherlessness are those that have the highest rates of negative outcomes. There are people that were raised without a father and whose mothers tried to do the best that they can, and they managed to make the best of a bad situation. But it is a bad situation to be raised without a father, especially when the father chooses to leave the family, chooses to abandon the family, or the father is pushed away from the family by the mother, which is something that is more and more common. Now, number two is a lie that is a clever one, and it's related to another topic that I'm very passionate about, that I feel is one of the most important moral issues of our time. And that lie is that abortion is a woman's issue. Abortion is basically no uterus, no opinion. That's what they'll say. And this lie really makes sense from the perspective of abortion advocates, people that want to be able to kill the son or daughter in the womb through abortion, through all 9 months of pregnancy. This is something that makes sense because if you acknowledge that every single son or daughter in the womb has a father, and that father's responsibility primarily is to protect and defend his innocent son or daughter, then you realize that there's a lot of men out there that will take that responsibility very seriously. Basically, that'll be a huge threat to those in the abortion industry that want to be able to dispose of these little human lives, little human beings, without any restrictions whatsoever. So abortion is not solely a woman's issue. Every single son or daughter in the womb who is aborted has a father who had the responsibility to do every single thing in his power to protect his son or daughter. Now, legally, if a woman is determined to end the life of her son or daughter in the womb, there's very little legally that a father can do to protect his child. But many abortions happen because the fathers encourage it, because they say, you know what, I'm not going to take care of this child, or I don't want this child, you need to get rid of this child. Many abortions, I think the majority of abortions, are of women who feel like the father will not be supportive of raising the child. So as fathers and as men, we need to be better. We need to only engage in the act that creates children if we're prepared for that possible outcome. We need to be responsible in that way. And then also, if we do create a child, we need to do everything in our power to convince the mother to fight for that life, to view that life, that son or daughter in the womb that's growing, developing, that has his or her own DNA, his or her own little tiny body, that life is worth protecting and worth sacrificing for, and that we as fathers are willing to take up the responsibility of fatherhood to protect and defend that life. And I think if most men were willing to do that much, to just have that difficult conversation of saying, you know what, do not end the life, do not end this life. Like, I'll do whatever it takes to make a situation so that you feel like you're comfortable bringing this life into the world and that you feel cared for and protected. And it used to be that marriage was part of that. There were a lot of what we call shotgun weddings in the past where men would be like, oh, well, we didn't really intend to create a child, but now a child exists, so we're going to get married and we're going to raise this child together. And that is something that becomes less common, largely because we've kind of pushed this concept of sexual liberation, that people should be able to do whatever they want physically, and that the procreative act, that if it actually ends up creating a new life, that's more of a nuisance or more of a error rather than things working exactly as they're intended to. You know, this is another lie. I've thought about creating an organization, maybe something along the lines of Fathers for Life. Fathers for Life. I've thought about getting, artworks, creating my own artworks or artworks from other artists that are willing to celebrate, the traditional nuclear family, motherhood, fatherhood, and the importance of that unit as a way of being pro-life and protecting every single human being, regardless of the age, location, or reason that somebody might not want that human being to exist. So that's another lie that I feel like we're told. Half of the children that are aborted are sons. Most of the abortionists that actually do the physical killing of the child are men. Every single aborted child has a father. This is not just a women's issue. This is a human rights issue, and it is the responsibility of men to be protectors and to protect the weak and vulnerable and the innocent. And that's a responsibility that we need to take up again. And we need to say, you know what, enough. Like, this is enough. You know, after 63 million plus human beings have been slaughtered, enough. This is something that's going to end. It takes courageous men to stand up for those that are weaker, to stand up against the societal pressure, to say, you know what, this is a women's issue. It's not my responsibility. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. You know what, there's things that we can do, and it's our responsibility to do those things to protect life. So that's lie number 2, that abortion is a women's issue. We need fathers to step up on that issue, especially. Number 3 is that we do not have, or that we do not need our Father in heaven, that we don't need God. Now, this is one that I've gotten a lot of pushback, but it's something that I'll keep speaking of, that we need our Father in heaven. We are moving away from God, and it is not a good thing. People will say, you shouldn't push your religion on other people. You shouldn't push your religion on this. But these same people are often pushing their ideas of what is good, what is moral, and how people should behave, and that is their religion. So if you believe that someone should act in a certain way, then that is your religious belief. That is something that you believe religiously. Otherwise, you wouldn't try to convince others to believe that concept or to act in that way. The only truly non-religious people are people that don't share any beliefs with any other group of people. They don't try to convince anybody else that something is right or wrong. They don't try to argue for others to adapt their worldview. This is just something that doesn't describe people. Like, people are religious and you will worship something. Now, you can worship God, you can worship the creator of the universe, or you'll find something else to worship. You can worship yourself, you can worship possessions, you can worship the earth, we can worship the environment, we can worship the universe, but you will worship something. You will put something at the top of what you view as valuable, what you view as important. And whatever that is, that serves the function of God for you. There's nothing better to put at the top of that pyramid of what you value than the ultimate source of good and creativity and righteousness. Like, that is God. Now, you might have trouble believing that there was a creator of the universe. You might be agnostic about it, say, well, maybe there's God, maybe there's not, but we can never know. But regardless of how you feel, you will serve someone. You can say, well, I'm just going to serve myself. I'm just going to do whatever feels good to me. You could serve a political party or politicians and say, well, I'm going to put that in place of my religion. And we see this more and more now. As people turn away from Christianity, we seem to be turning back towards paganism, towards worshiping things like the world, Mother Earth, or talking about things like the universe or the power of the universe. These are replacements for the one true and living God who created us, who created the universe, who sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins and to be resurrected so that we too can overcome death. These replacements are flimsy. The more I see the direction that society moves as it moves away from Christianity and away from God, the more I'm convinced that we need our Father in heaven. We need God. Just like children need their fathers in the home, we need our fathers in heaven. And so that's the third lie that we're told, that we don't need God, but we do. We need our Father in heaven. Lie number 4 is that fatherhood, or having children, gets in the way of success. The truth is exactly the opposite. For me, if all I had to do was take care of myself, my standard of living and my ambitions would be just a fraction of what they are, because I'm a father and because I want to do better at taking care of my family, at providing for them, making sure that there's a roof over our head, if I didn't have that motivating factor of, you know what, I have my kids to think about, I have a family to take care of. If that wasn't a motivating factor for me, then I wouldn't be as good of a person as I am. I wouldn't try as hard to be disciplined financially. I wouldn't try as hard to be successful in my career. And statistics bear this out, that men who have families, who are fathers, tend to earn more because they are more motivated. They have something greater that they're working for, which is their family. So that's lie number 4. Now, lie number 5 is that marriage is not what we thought it was, or the redefinition of marriage. Now, you might think that I'm talking about the redefinition of marriage to include same-sex couples, and that is an issue, that's a topic for another day, but what I'm actually talking about is no-fault divorce, or the idea that the covenant or the promise of marriage is actually something that can be broken without some sort of fault or some sort of reason. Or in other words, that it's a contract that is meaningless, that's essentially meaningless because either parties can break the contract without any consequence and without any reason for breaking this contract or breaking this promise. So no-fault divorce is something that became popular because people want to say, well, you know, with two people trying to find who is actually at fault for the divorce so that the other one is punished, it's just a bad situation legally. So let's just have no-fault divorce and that anybody can leave a marriage for any reason. Nobody has to be at fault. But that's just not how contracts work, and that's not how marriage should work, especially when children are involved. As I've talked about before, there are very few things that are greater indicators of a difficult life than children that come from broken families or broken marriages. Your marriage is the world that your children build their life on. Your marriage is their world, and when you break your marriage up, you break their world. Once children are involved, marriage, it should be difficult to break those bonds. That promise that we made between husband and wife and God and society. So this is something that we tell other people that, you know what, we're committed to each other till death do us part. Whatever happens, we're going to stick together, we're going to work it out. That's what marriage is supposed to be. But that is not how marriage is viewed in our society. There's even incentives for divorce. The marriage laws are very unfavorable, especially to men, and they actually sometimes almost reward divorce for women by saying to women, you can get divorced and you can take the financial benefit of still being married. You can take even maybe more than what you were financially getting when you were married. You can, you know, take half of the assets, and then you just don't have to deal with your husband anymore. And so there's this really perverse incentive structure that I think has led to more divorce. And so it is a lie that marriage is basically a meaningless promise, that it's something that either parties can walk away from without being at fault. If somebody leaves the marriage, then there was a fault somewhere. There was something that went incredibly wrong, because that's not what marriage is supposed to be. Marriage is supposed to be till death do us part. I believe, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that if we get married by God's authority in His temple, that even after death we are going to be sealed as families. We're going to be connected because that marriage covenant or that bond of marriage is so strong that it'll hold us together even after death. Now, that might not be something that you believe. That is what I believe. But certainly we need to rethink how we approach marriage and family in society to say, you know what we've been doing to children is not right. What we've been doing to children, making divorce so easy, is not something that has benefited the generations that have lived through this separation of the family. Now we see kids from divorced homes that don't even want to get married because they thought, well, marriage didn't work for my parents, so I'll just forego getting married altogether. And that's the exact opposite lesson that we should take from it. We should actually take the lesson, my parents didn't work for their marriage, so I'm going to work for mine. I'm going to make my marriage successful. Now, these are the first 5 things that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic, but I could go on and talk about a bunch of other falsehoods that I feel like we're fed to try to remove us from the family. I do believe that that attack on the family is from Satan. Whatever you want to call the force that wants to see everything get worse and people destroy themselves and destroy each other, whatever that force is, whether you call it, well, I believe that it's a physical, we're fighting against principalities, powers, like these unseen forces. I believe that that push to destroy the family, to replace the family, to get rid of children, to the point where with things like transgenderism, we're castrating children. We're taking away the possibility of fatherhood from little boys whose mothers are transitioning them and castrating these little boys to rob them from the possibility of ever being fathers. In what moral universe could that ever be something that we allow in society? This is insanity from a dark, dark place. It comes from lies. It comes from mistruth, the lie that men and women are essentially interchangeable, that you can exchange a man for a woman for a man, and there's basically no difference because men don't really need women and women don't really need men. The lie that men and women are interchangeable, that you can replace a man with a woman, this is at the heart of the transgender madness that is going on, that men can be women and women can be men, or that two men and two women are basically the same as a man and a woman, and we should call them the same thing. We should call them married. And these lies lead to such a dark place that we're castrating little boys and little girls in the name of this lie that they can somehow be something that they're not. This comes from a falsehood about who we are as human beings. It comes from a falsehood because we've lost our identity, which is sons and daughters of God, that we are His son or daughter, and that God didn't make a mistake in placing the spirit of a woman in a man's body or vice versa. These lies lead to dark places. And so this was kind of a heavy topic, heavy video, but it's something that I feel very passionately about. I think maybe more people need to speak out for the truth, speak out and say what they believe, fight for what is right, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm grateful to be a father. I'm grateful to be a husband. I'm grateful to be a son of God. I'm grateful for what I have. Stay creative, stay productive. I'll see you in the next video.